Saturday evening snow spreading back into New England. You can track it all with our app, totally free. You can watch a live radar, see the snow expand at Live Radar, brought to you by CrackX. But just search for Noises, 1 degree outside, weather on the App Store and Google Play. You'll be able to pick up the app and use it on sunny days or stormy days alike. We've got a lot coming up in this video. It is not going to be short, but we are going to leave no stone unturned. You will be covered if you live anywhere in New England, from the northern tip of Maine to the southern tip of Connecticut. In Connecticut, you're going to get night snow going to a mix, and then Sunday it's a mix over to rain. It does get gusty at the coast, not as gusty as it does in Rhode Island at the coastline by the time we get later Sunday, and not as gusty still as it will on the Cape later on Sunday as we get to the evening. We'll take a look at that together. Massachusetts, not only to get the night snow, you're going to get some extended freezing rain for some of the deep interior. We'll look at that together here in just a second. Vermont, you go from the snow to what will end up being more snow in northern Vermont, ice in southern Vermont on Sunday. New Hampshire, big ice storm coming for parts of central and southern New Hampshire. We'll look at that together. I think it's sleet, though, more than freezing rain for you. And getting into Maine, again, a big sleet storm in southern Maine up through the Maine Turnpike and then coastal Maine, and then the farther north you go, the more into the big snow you get. This is going to be a snowmobiler storm, absolutely. Skiers do pretty good as well. The setup is this. You get high pressure that's going off the coastline. It's starting to bring in milder air. You've got a low pressure that's going to be strengthening and kind of redeveloping right near the coastline. So that adds a lot of moisture to the whole equation here, and that's why as we go through the evening and you watch that live radar on our app, you'll watch the snow filling in. The forecast time in the upper left here through 8 p.m., the snow expanding for a lot of New England. Now, notice by midnight, you've got sleet coming in. The pink will be a mix, okay? This is going to be either sleet or freezing rain, but I'm going to break it down for you over the course of this video. Bottom line at first, this is sleet. The difference, by the way, freezing rain is rain that falls as raindrops and freezes on contact, so you need temperature below freezing, but if you have a thicker layer of cold sub-freezing air, you can get ice pellets. Ice pellets would be sleet. You got sleet that's up through Worcester and Boston by the time we get to 5 in the morning. That's little ball bearings of ice that come down on the roadways, and they can get packed down as cars go over them. Real tough to treat from a road treatment perspective, because essentially you just have to scrape and scrape once that ice gets packed down and kind of bonds to the roadways. Notice by the time we get into tomorrow mid-morning, 9:45, now you've got sleet coming all the way to the lakes region. The snow continuing to fall in the north. Up the Maine Turnpike, it is still snowing at about 9:45 or 10 tomorrow morning. Now, Boston, I bet you'll be at 33 by the time we get to 9:45. That's an important distinction. If you're not, then you got freezing rain even in Boston. But the guess here and the estimate here is that in Boston, you probably snow to sleet around 5 to 7, 4 to 7 in the morning, and then end up going into rain in about 33 or 34. Your temperature would climb from there regardless. And notice the farther inland that you go, the harder that is to do. Out to 495, we can get you over to plain rain as we go through the day Sunday. But when you get outside and into, let's say, north central Worcester County, the Route 2 corridor at Fitchburg, Leominster, and then running out to the eastern slopes of the Berkshires, that's going to be freezing rain for you a lot of the day tomorrow, and it's a lot of it. It's a lot of it. We're going to get to it in a minute. Farther off to the north, we're talking about sleet, a big sleet storm, southern Vermont running up to central New Hampshire. Now, admittedly, very fine line between sleet and freezing rain has to do with how thick the cold air is. So if we're off, you get the freezing rain farther to the north. I just don't think that we're going to be off in that regard. Now, notice as we get to 6:30 in the evening, big-time sleet carries up the Maine Turnpike. And again, I can't overstate for you how significant sleet can be for travel impacts. Wherever it's all sleet or a lot of sleet after that snow tonight, it's going to be real tough tomorrow. And then we get into tomorrow night and you start getting what we call upslope snows back in the mountains again as the wind starts to come out of the west. That wind's going to rip, and we'll look at that in a couple of minutes too, but it's going to carry lake effect streamers of snow all the way off Lake Ontario and into the Boston area perhaps during the day on Monday. Pretty noteworthy anyway from, let's say, a weather standpoint, even if it's not necessarily going to be a big deal from an impact standpoint nonetheless. All right, let's get you over to the snow map. Not a lot of change from what Danielle showed you earlier this morning. If you saw that video, a big broad 2 to 4 that shows up in light blue, 4 to 6 runs just north of the turnpike or south of it when you get into parts of eastern Mass. You've got 6 to 8 in the deep blue. That's what you start to pick up in northern Mass. The purples are where you get 8 to 12. Maybe it's more like the 8 side in south central New Hampshire, but the 8 to 12 will hold you up. The greens, where it's a good burst, comes in overnight tonight before going over to sleet tomorrow. Look at the 12 to 18 in parts of northern New England. We think it's more on the 12 side around Burlington, but nonetheless, you get into the mountains, 12 to 18 solid. Same thing, look at this, big time snowmobile country. Coos County, northern Carroll County at Jackson, Bartlett, and Glen, running up through Berlin, Pittsburgh, Rangeley, and all the way to Presque Isle and the Crown down to Maine. Big old swath of 12 to 18, a lot less the farther south you come because of the sleet that gets involved instead. Let's talk about freezing rain first. Glaze can cause power outages in addition to washing treatments off of roads and walkways and then freezing again. So heavy, frequent treatment is needed for travel in the areas that are seeing freezing rain, and power outages become exceedingly likely when you get half an inch of freezing rain accretion or ice glaze or more. And we think the best chance of that is in the areas we've highlighted here in the deeper purple. And that would be, again, the eastern slopes of the Berkshires and then also running into northern Worcester County, bleeding over the state line into parts of southwest New Hampshire, just outside the Monadnock region as well. Elsewhere, you get a glaze, but it's not necessarily to the same extent. Sleet becomes a major problem for some areas. We think the deeper into the cold air you are, the worse the sleet event is going to be. You'll notice a lot of us get at least some amount of sleet. Almost everybody gets some amount of sleet, right? But when you start getting into southern Vermont around Wilmington or Dover or bleed across the state line into Florida, Massachusetts, you may be just far enough north and west that rather than getting huge freezing rain, or maybe in addition to it, you get the sleet first and then you get the freezing rain that comes after that. Big sleet storm the way we see it now for New Boston, for Antrim, for Peterborough up to Hooksett. The only thing I'd caution you toward, and it's out of humility from a forecaster standpoint, is it's an extremely fine line between this and freezing rain. So to have in the back of your mind, if this goes to freezing rain, you're dealing with an extended power outage situation in these areas right across through Deerfield, Barrington, Rochester, Farmington, and then coming up into southern Maine would be a good idea. Plan on the sleet, but understand that if we're a little bit off, like by a degree or so, when you get up in the low levels of the atmosphere, a couple thousand feet up, that makes a big difference. We also think there'll be a quarter of heavy sleet through Dexter and Newport and Lincoln, Maine, almost all the way up to Holton. And then again, the farther north and west you go, the more you start getting into the snow instead. What about rainfall? Look, if you combine all the precipitation, it's a ton. It's like 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches. The one thing I'll point out with this is where you do go to rain. So Boston, 95, eventually 495, right? Even a lot of Connecticut, Rhode Island, Southeast Mass. You get the snow first. It's going to clog the drains, so you're going to get poor drainage, which means you're going to end up getting some standing water. And folks who take care of that stuff, just keep in mind it's going to turn cold Sunday night, so any standing moisture will end up freezing, particularly if it's stuck in areas that didn't drain out very well. So if you're someone who works a DPW crew, a DOT crew, or you work on a facility, a good idea to have someone kind of assigned to clearing out the drains during tomorrow morning as we make the change from snow over to rain and freezing rain. Notice the wind gusts. This is what I was talking about. When you get to the southeastern portions of Connecticut at New London, running across Block Island, Newport, and the Cape, when we get to tomorrow evening, that wind is going to blast out of the southwest. What's happening is the storm is strengthening as it goes by, and it's sucking air in toward its center. So you may get gusts over 50. We may get some power outages at the south coast tomorrow. The other thing is you actually may get a thunderstorm that's embedded in some of that heavy rain tomorrow afternoon with that kind of a feed of moisture and warmth going in. So there is a chance of thundersnow tonight in a couple of spots, rumble of thunder with the snow, but then also perhaps a thunderstorm near the south coast. If you can get into enough of that with all that amount of energy, it's kind of getting brought in. You get farther to the west and the winds are going to start to kick tomorrow night. This is a cold front coming through. When that blasts on by, the winds overnight tomorrow night into Monday start to gust 40, 50, and on Monday, some spots may gust to 60. There will be damage done across New England on Monday because of the wind alone. But you have to remember, wherever we get a glaze, okay, so I'm thinking eastern slopes of the Berks, I'm thinking northern Worcester County, I'm thinking some parts of southern New Hampshire, wherever we get that glaze, that's going to be a lot of weight on the power lines and the tree limbs, and then you're going to rip a 50 and 60 mile per hour gust through there on Monday. You're going to get new outages Monday because of the strain that gets put on the lines and the limbs. The other thing is the cold that comes back. I mentioned that whatever moisture's around is going to freeze. May not qualify as a flash freeze because it doesn't happen instantaneously. It happens over hours. That does give a chance for some of the moisture to dry out before freezing on Sunday evening and night, but wherever you have that poor drainage, it kind of sticks around and freezes up. Notice the wind chill Sunday night dipping down to the single digits. Warming centers for communities that do that, you may want to do that on Sunday night. You certainly want to do that Monday night when the wind chill goes to 10 below zero because you've still got cold temperatures on Monday and the wind is whipping as we looked at. So even your daytime wind chills are running in the single digits Monday with, again, the nighttime stuff down to like 10 or 15 below zero on Monday night. Just another reminder, track it all, find our updates as you need them, right with our app. Noises 1 degree outside, weather on the App Store and Google Play. All right, hopefully that gives you everything you need to know on this one, but if not, you let us know, and we'll take care of it next time around. We'll continue to keep you updated at onedegreeoutside.com, now your only digital source for all of New England weather.